Hi everyone, my name is Rogers Muyanja and I'm originally from Uganda. Uh, my story is simple. I migrated from Uganda to the USA in 2009, and when I got here, actually I realized, like most immigrants, that the dynamics are different from what we always think of the USA. And so when I got to this country, I settled right into Lowell, Massachusetts, where I'd hoped I'd be taking on a position as a journalist just like I was in Uganda. But then I realized that that wasn't the case because things were different. Because of my accent, of course, because of the culture. Practicing journalism was, of course, going to be impossible, but also because every time I tried to apply for a position, nothing came through. So my first attempt to a job, I worked at a restaurant called Fresh City, where I think some of you have heard my story. But I worked at a restaurant called Fresh City in that was between Burlington and Woburn at the time, on West Side Common. And the very first job for me was a dishwasher. So you can imagine coming from Uganda, where I'd been an established journalist for a few years, and then coming and starting from scratch. So it was quite an interesting experience that required a lot of patience and basically patience, I should say. Then it occurred to me that perhaps I had to figure out how I had to navigate my way in this country. And that led me to enrolling into college. I ended up heading to Middlesex Community College, where I pursued my liberal arts associate degree in psychology as well as liberal arts. And then eventually I went to UMass for my undergrad as well as grad school. You see, just like I mentioned, most immigrants, finding ground is always challenging for all of us. And in part it's because, like I mentioned, the expectations are different, but also it's hard to figure out what you eventually have to become. And for me, at first I thought education was going to be it. After school, I got a job as a community I started off as a job developer, but before that, I tried applying to different institutions for a career position that didn't come through. Eventually, I ended up at the International Institute of Rhode Island, where I worked as a job developer, where my role was basically connecting employers to the students that were enrolled at the Docas International Institute of Rhode Island. So basically I was establishing relationships with employers there. Eventually I got a job as a community relations manager at another organization with a similar mission, because the other one resettled refugees and worked with immigrants, as well as individuals that had had interrupted education. Then I come to the International Institute of New England in Massachusetts, and worked as a community relations manager. So my job was basically raising funds for the organization, doing outreach, basically speaking on behalf of the organization to ensure the community was aware of its work, but also figure out how we can engage the community and get them to participate. Now, at that point, I realized that there are a lot of things that we were not actually resonating to as immigrants, when I say we, because I speak from a mindset of an immigrant. And I had a portfolio of over 900 donors. But among these donors, there wasn't anybody like me. And in addition to that, I realized that a lot of these individuals had a lot of money, and they were donating to the organization comfortably. And here I was working at this organization, very passionate about what I was doing, but without the ability to be able to raise money, to donate to an institution like that. It is at that point that I started asking myself, what was I doing wrong? What had I done wrong to be in the position that I was in at the time. And it is at that point that I started looking out. I remember attending one event in Lowell at some financial center, and I had a gentleman who had come from Texas, a financial professional, discussing his journey. He had been a very accomplished individual. He was almost my age, slightly older than me. And at that point, it occurred to me that perhaps I'd been doing everything the wrong way. And so it was at that point that I decided I had to figure out what the financial industry was about. And after that decision, I left everything that I was doing and got involved in the financial industry. I pursued the licensure and started a business in the financial industry. Now, for a lot of people, somebody of my background who had never opened up a business, mentioning the aspect of starting a business would be mind-boggling, because somebody would wonder, what are you going to do and how are you going to run a business? It was the case with me as well. I consistently questioned myself. I wondered whether I was making the right decision. But here we are. More than 2 years later, I'm still standing. You know, I overheard, I was listening to a presentation by one prominent or successful individual, Elon Musk, who said, and that was just a year, my first year in the business. He mentioned that most businesses do not succeed within the first 2 years. And that, which is what gives me hope that perhaps I've surpassed that milestone, because I've surpassed the 2 years, right? And so, how I started was, I had seen a need. And I think that this should be something that everyone maybe learns from, is identify a need. I think that everyone may want to understand one thing. If your goal or hope is to start a business, is identify a need. Once you identify a need, also try to look out for the resources that are going to be necessary for you to be able to effectively address that need. For me, the need that I was able to find pertained to the financial gap between families that relate or that look like me. And I realized that there was a role that I had to play to ensure that changes were initiated. I had come to this country as an immigrant. My journey had been complex. It had been filled with a lot of bumps. And yet I was serving an organization where we were resettling immigrants and refugees who were consistently going to live the same lifestyle that I'd led. So I knew that as much as there were these initiatives to, you know, resettle or resettlement programs for refugees and immigrants, the status quo wasn't changing, because once we were settling them in, they were getting into employment, some were getting into schools, and they were starting the same lifestyle that I was living. And so I realized that there was a way we could be able to figure out what information, once we get here, that we were not able to get to, and be able to understand how it would help us be able to do what we may be able to do. And that was financial literacy. And that is how I ended up starting a business in financial literacy. And so our organization has focused on educating families to understand how financial institutions work, to understand how the different investment strategies work, so that they are able to position themselves to do better, to be able to make the right decisions. You see, we believe that building wealth is not based on how much money you make, but it is all about how much money you are able to keep every time you get that paycheck. But as well as figuring out what right platforms to keep that money. Because if you're keeping that money in a platform where it does not have potential to grow, then such factors such as inflation and taxes are going to beat it. So at the end of the day, you realize you have nothing. And so, understanding such concepts, including understanding how debt works in this country. Because a lot of us come from backgrounds where we do not day in, day out work with debt. And then you come to this country and you realize you need credit history to be able to rent a house. You need credit history to be able to buy a phone, or even get a lease for a house, or rent an apartment. So these dynamics eventually end up rather pulling us into getting debt or accumulating debt. And because we do not have a culture of managing debt, that's how we get pulled in and get stuck in there. A lot of us are going to work hard all our lives and retire poor just because we never understood the simple basics of managing money. And we are going to eventually see our children finish college with a lot of debt, and it's going to become their way of life. And so, through financial literacy, we get to learn how to position ourselves, but also how to plan. And once we are able to learn these concepts, we'll be able to teach our children or educate them so that eventually we are able to transfer that knowledge to the other generations that are coming after us. So, that said, I went on a mission of not only empowering myself and educating myself, but also of changing my community. Today, as I speak, I have several hundreds of team members or business partners across this state, as well as in the different other states that I'm consistently working with, and not only to change themselves, just like I have, but also to change the communities that they are connected to. I feel like that's the business that I had passion for, and that I've consistently continued to build. And with that said, I think it is safe to say that you could start from nothing and be able to grow or develop to something of significance. Because my story is just a story that actually tells that exactly. Thank you so much.
All right, my brother, thank you so much for this wonderful quick talk you gave us today. And that you summarized very, very well what you do, your journey, and it hasn't been so long.
No, it hasn't.
So many times we think, you need 10 years, because you said you only started in 2019 in this business.
Exactly.
But it's amazing the following, the influence you've had on this industry that is often neglected or undermined by our people. So what have been some of the challenges?
By the way, thank you so much for asking about that, because you see, a lot of times we do not talk about the challenges. One is, from the beginning when I was just starting this business, there was one very little understanding of how the financial industry works. Even the understanding of simple concepts like the different investment vehicles, like 401k, life insurance, name it. Yes. And so a lot of people that I reached out to start to initiate the conversations,
yes,
kept telling me the same one thing: Rogers, that is too Caucasian. It's not us. And so in the beginning, it was a struggle to change the mindset of the individuals that I was consistently engaging with, to understand that concepts or platforms that are utilized for us to financially position ourselves to do better, that are designed in this country, are not meant for just a few, but they are for everybody, for everyone that is looking to do well. And so that was a constant struggle until I learned that one, I had to make a connection on what the individuals were involved in or doing, and make sure that it resonated with what I was talking about. So when it came to concepts like investing, so I'd ask, what are you doing to financially do better? And then I'd realize that they would be maybe farming in Uganda or building up apartments. So I could use that information to create, to estimate results, and then use the same portfolios or investment portfolios here to kind of give an outcome if at all the investments were being done in this country. And that actually helped them to see things in a different way, and I think eventually that consistently continued changing their mindset. And so even today, we still struggle with that, because a lot of us are usually glued to where we know or what we are comfortable with than what we do not know.
Yeah, and I like you mentioned that what we know, usually we want to be comfortable.
Yeah.
But from knowing each other for all these years,
Yes.
and we talked about how I was very skeptical about getting into the financial industry.
Exactly.
Because people said insurance is a scam.
Exactly.
That's what you hear everybody tells you. And you shy away from it.
Yep.
But now, especially or most of us who come from Africa or from Haiti or from other countries, usually when somebody dies, people have to set up a GoFundMe, to send the body back.
Yeah.
But all these things are for, like you say, it's for everyone.
Exactly.
So what is the response at the moment? How are people responding to things like life insurance, setting up generational wealth?
And I'm glad you're bringing up, I usually do not speak on specific products or
Yes.
solutions, but I'm going to delve into that conversation for the purposes of helping everyone watching this to actually understand something crucial.
Yes.
You see, life insurance is one of the most significant components of accumulating wealth. And a lot of us do not know that. In fact, it is also another tool that we can utilize to transfer wealth from one generation to another.
True.
Now, because life insurance has evolved over time, there are a lot of new components to a life insurance policy that are very crucial to us, even in our lifestyle, rather in our lifetime.
Yeah.
An example, if some people do not know that some life insurance policies, and I say some intentionally, that some life insurance policies have riders or elements within them that can actually can lead to somebody getting income in the event that during their lifetime they became sick or disabled. It also has components that could actually help provide some sort of monies in the event somebody attained a terminal illness, let's say cancer, and they were perhaps declared to be dying within a year or so. Make sense?
Yes.
And they are also assets that individuals are actually using to save up money and be able to supplement their retirement. I mean, you could save money and upon retirement, trigger that life insurance to give you income while you are retired.
Wow.
So there are a lot of key components to a life insurance policy that a lot of people do not have an idea about, because our way of thinking about life insurance has primarily been in relation to death.
Oh,
And
so,
a lot
so
of-
we only think about, so this money, why am I even saving the money
Exactly.
if I'm not going to enjoy it?
Exactly.
But what I've learned today is that you don't even have to die
Nope.
in order for you to enjoy the benefits of, for example, having life insurance.
Exactly.
Wow. Yes, so I know we only have a brief time to discuss this, but can you just tell us, if people who are watching, I know we have a big audience watching us, how do they connect with you? How do they, are you online? Where can they find you, and how can they get in touch with you to learn more about all these products and the information that you have that our people desperately need?
Oh, thank you so much. So one, I think you're going to provide my number down there, an email, but I'm primarily located in Burlington, Massachusetts. So our offices are on Cambridge Street, and the address is 83 Cambridge Street in Burlington, Massachusetts. We are just across from the Mercedes-Benz offices. We're on the second floor, and when you come into that building, you'll look for Burlington Community Financial Center. That is where we are located. It's Suite 2A. So it's on the second floor, number 2A. Aside from that, I could be found on Facebook. My name is Rogers Muyanja. We also have a Facebook page for Burlington Community Financial Center. So for individuals that are looking to learn more about who we are, they can get there. If you want to learn more about the concepts of education pertaining to what we do, you can check out the website called World System Builder. It's worldsystembuilder.com. It's one word, worldsystembuilder.com, to learn about what our movement of financial professionals do. And so our doors are open Monday to Monday.
Wow. Wow. Thank you so much for the quick talk you've given us. And I know many people are going to be helped, especially the younger generation, because we are more informed. We are hungry. We want to succeed. Unlike our parents who probably didn't have the same information we have today. So we really do appreciate you coming by.
Thank you.
And we're going to have a quick start conference in September. Hopefully, we'll make some connections so we can maybe come and make another appearance and be able to educate our people so that they know how to save, know how to invest, and live a successful life. So thank you so much, Mr. Rogers.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate this. Thank you.
Thank you.